Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Rouse, author of this little guy right here. Not so little, 573 pages, not even half the story. These other little books as well, where you can get that, my merchandise, all down in that description. So go down, use those fingers, find out more. And while you're down there, I'm just going to take that moment to say thank you guys for making such an incredible family here. I just always like to start off with my episodes being thankful because really, truly, I've met some amazing people. I have just, I'm so lucky to have my channel monetized and to have you guys here and to just being interested in what I have to say. So my whole family out there, all 21, 24 of us, thank you so much for just being here and being subscribed, truly. Whether we conversate or have conversations or you just hang out in the balcony, that's cool. I'm just so thankful for everybody that's part of the family. Thank you. And today we are going to do more reading. It's just a week of reading because May of 1988 was just so busy. Or, well, all of 1988. Oh, God. But May alone, like I've said before, Danny and I both were laughing just a week ago that we were surprised we could still walk after May of 1988. And we were so happy we couldn't because, that means you're having a good fucking time. You're getting a lot of backstage passes. You're getting the Rockstar fix on, So, and speaking of Rockstar fix, we're just going to finish up this Malibu. As you guys, I can't drink heavy liquor as quick as I used to. So we're going to finish this Malibu Sunrise. We're just going to chug it. No, we're not. So everybody grab your sunrises, kick up your feet, grab my bells. Stripper habits die hard. All right. Cheers, big ears. I do like that when I'm not like a big rum fan in Malibu, and I kind of had a disagreement many, many years ago when I was throwing up in a parking lot after taking too many Malibu shots. Yeah. Whew. I think we just had the bottle at some point because it was new. We were all excited about it. And, but I can still enjoy it once in a while. Okay, so like I said, this week we're doing readings. That's kind of what we're doing. And things we haven't talked about. We're going to kind of remind people of, that haven't seen it yet, that are new here. So we're going to talk about May of 1988. We're going to talk about one in particular, but starts off with Aerosmith and Joe Perry. Moves to Yngwie Malmsteen and Lita Ford, and when Chris Holmes was there, and everybody says Lita Ford is the baddest bitch in rock and roll, which she and I have been with a lot of the same guys, so it was only natural that I was making out with her fiance at the time, Chris Holmes, Kristen and I both, while she was playing on stage, and we were making out with Chris, because we already knew Chris. We knew Chris. But neither of us had ever been with him, but he was just back then this tall drink of fucking sexy water. And his attitude and personality, he just came sauntering over and you were like, hi, daddy. Okay. But we are going to stop in May. Because like I said, there were a ton of band. Iron Maiden, just everybody who could be there. Literally a different band in town every day. But we're going to stop on May 24th with the man I started my whole rock and roll venture with, David Lee Roth and Poison. And for those of you, where we're going, But for those of you who don't, hang on. This is going to get to be a little bit of a bumpy ride. So, all right, this is David Lee Roth and Poison, May 24th of 1988. And Kristen and I had met this roadie that had been on several tours. I dated roadies. I have a lot of friends that are roadies because we're all on the road. We're all part of the family. We're all confined into this little world together. So it's only natural that that's your friend social circle, And there was one particular roadie in general, Richie Barron. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. But Richie was on all the big tours from Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, David Lee Roth and Poison. Just every big fucking band at the time. He was with them. And this was another one that he was with. So I'm just kind of explaining to who Richie is. And every time Richie came into town, blam. We had whatever band we wanted in the palm of our hands. 'Cause back then, like Kip Winger and everybody have said on MTV specials about rock and roll in the 80s, there was bonus structure for rock and roll roadies. If you introduced them to the girl that they hung out with in that town or they ended up touring or liking, you got about $100 to $200 bonus. Yep. That was rock and roll at the time. How do you think a bunch of roadies fucking retired early? Started their own businesses. Just kidding. It was the 80s. We fucking knew about it. We knew about it. And we were cool with it. It's not like we weren't the commodities. The rock stars were. Like I always say, they were our man candy. All right. So May 24th of 1988. It was destined to be another Richie success story from the second Kristen and I made our way to the Marriott in downtown Salt Lake City. David Lee Roth and Poison, La La Land's latest pretty boys, were set to be gracing our city, and of course we would be there with our usual Salt Lake City welcoming committee bells on our toes and bows on our tits. But really, it was more, if you know about the bows, there's a Def Leppard night. But really, it was more like rock and roll welcoming Kristen and I home. We, of course, went straight to Richie's room and began to imbibe in our usual party starters. As we all got ready to plan our takeover for the evening, I told Richie who I wanted in hopes that he could, as usual, set things up. Bret Michaels was on my menu tonight. He was just too pretty and cocky not to have at least once in the 80s. This took Richie and Kristen aback a little as I was breaking away from my first and most coveted man, whom I was expected to disappear with at some point in the night. What the hell? What baby wants, baby gets, said Richie. 10 minutes and a couple of phone calls later, Richie had the ball rolling right into my corner pocket. Check. Because like I said, ladies and gentlemen, it was hedonism in the 80s. All we had to do was either show up at the hotel bar or ask. And the party started. And we usually got who we wanted. You know? We usually just were one-track minded. And a little bit of dirty minded. And when you are the one seducing someone, it's so easy to kind of get them into your grasp, into your Black Widow web, so to speak. Oh, I love it. Still do it. All right. And I'm not being a bitch. I'm not thinking it's because of my look. It's about an attitude. It's about an approach. It's about a confidence in yourself that you don't need them as a relationship, but you would love to have them as your lover. Take a card. There's a place for you right on that shelf, sweetheart. All right. Before the three of us headed over to the other hotel where Poison was staying, at the time the Hilton, Richie warned me of two things. First and foremost, Bret hated lipstick that was too light. Like when it's, you know how in the 2000s we all had that beige kind of blended into our skin lipstick color. Yeah, he hated that. So it was too light. I needed to darken what I was wearing. Done. I found my favorite Estee Lauder hot pink and remade my lips to specification. Because I was wearing Estee Lauder back then because my grandma bought it for me. I mean, she was like, no, you need a proper makeup. I mean, these were just kind of rites of passages in my family. You know, we all went together to shopping for our first makeup and stuff, as I'm sure a lot of moms do with their daughters. It's a rite of passage for everybody. Okay, the hot pink and made my lips to specification. Secondly, many of the girls on the road were abandoning David Lee Roth and his band for the hottest new pretty boys off the Sunset Strip. So David Lee Roth had strict backstage rules the day of the show. And any girl with an opening act pass for Poison was to be quickly exited from the backstage area of David Lee Roth's. Also, since David Lee was a gracious host, he had some pretty notorious after-show gets-together. All Poison rejects were to be let out the backstage doors because David Lee Roth didn't want anybody's rejects. DLR did not want to be second choice to these rookies in his world. I would not be able to switch hit once I fell into bed with Bret, losing my David Lee Roth. And you guys, this is really how it was on that tour. Like, because he was so jealous of, you know, it was his way to cock block. Ain't nobody gonna be fucking outdoing the absolute current hottest blonde lead singer in the world, David Lee Roth. Fuck you. He was not dealing with that. So I knew I was not able to switch it once I fell into bed with Brett. I knew this world had its rules laid out by the men, but I was going to look them right in the eye and say, fuck you, and challenge it. Plus, I knew if I didn't hit it off with Brett tonight, I could always backtrack to the Marriott and pick up where I left off with David Lee. With David Lee last year, and he would be none the wiser. Not until he pulled out of town, anyway. Because ladies, they gossip in the 80s. Oh, they gossiped. Like chickens in a hen house and having a sewing circle. Woo! Rock and roll, man. It's a small world, and we all talk about each other there. All right. Richie would never tell, not on his favorite Salt Lake City girls. I was beginning to stretch my bold legs to see if I could bend the rules the boys made, and I sure as hell could. We made our way down to the other hotel a few blocks away and arrived barely coherent and on 2 feet, because we were already drinking and smoking a Halloween. I was ready to eat Bret Michaels alive. So when Kristen, Richie, and I landed in his front door, Richie giving me the approving once over, and landed in front of his door, Richie giving me the approving once over. I was happy to find Brett wrapped up in my favorite garment. A towel. What is it with these rockers and their hotel towels when they answer the door? Eric Carr was one of the first. Did they wear anything else off stage, I began to wonder. Not as far as I knew. I was pushed through the door and right into Brett's waiting's arms. We talked and had a drink, and Richie and Kristen slammed that door behind. They were like, have fun, kids. Blam. Shut that door behind them, and they disappeared. I was like, oh, I'm in Bret Michaels' room. Perfect. Haven't even been up there for 2 hours. And I had the man that I was wanting. And like I said, it didn't have anything to do with I think I'm the hottest chick that can just men fall down at my face. No, it was rock and roll. In the 80s, all you had to do was ask. Ask any of the other ladies that I interviewed. Diana, Desiree, any of us. And I have a couple more that I'm going to be coming on. So, all right. Where was I? I was pushed through the door and into Brett's waiting's arms. We talked and had a drink before I went up to him and dropped his towel to the floor. Not bad. Not bad. But hopefully he was a grower, because I liked it a little thicker. Brett moved me closer to his bed, and he kissed my neck and put his body onto mine. Oh, this was it. That hot, pretty boy every girl had been fantasizing about was now face down and enraptured in between my legs. Too bad I was anything but. I saw a headline once about this tour in another city, a review from a Chicago paper, if I am not mistaken. It read as follows: David Lee Roth impresses as poison falls flat. Nothing else could have defined this moment better than that headline. It was like watching paint dry. I didn't even let Brett finish me off because it just wasn't going to happen. So I did a tap, 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 tap. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Excuse me, sir. And that's pretty much what it was. Like, ladies, if it's not working out for you, just get up and go. I mean, please. If you're not going to get off, then just leave. I didn't even let Brett finish me off because that just wasn't going to happen. I pushed him off me and made my way through the door before he could put my name on the guest list. I wasn't going to be one of those tossed out opening passes. Maybe if it was worth it, but the sex, if you could call it that, because it never went all the way, was not going to be worth it. I went back to the other hotel. I did. I went to the front desk. I went to the hotel lobby and was like, hey, yeah, I need to get a van to the Marriott Hotel. Because, like I said, if the oral was not, then the rest of it was, no. I was still 17. Even at 17, I knew. No is no. All right. So, where was I? I went back to the Marriott and I found Richie and Kristen in the hotel bar with Cece DeVille and Bobby Dahl. The plan was was to go to the local music hot club, the Zephyr. Oh, I miss that place. Had a lot of fun at that place. Met a lot of bands there. Johnny Winter, Typo Negative, The Romantics, among them many, many, many. The Zephyr, and do some partying there. But first, I needed to get to Richie's room and refresh myself and find David Lee Roth. And I meant just like fix my lipstick and hair and everything, because we carried everything with us back then. Change clothes, curling iron, toothbrushes. All right. Fuck the rock and roll rules. I knew Kristen and Richie would keep the last half hour of my life quiet from the rest of the tour so I could just go about what I should have been doing in the first place. David Lee. My libido had not been anywhere satisfied, and I had needed to fix that. I was going to go boldly. I was going to boldly go where no groupie had gone before. Across the boundaries, which is exactly what I did. I found the man I wanted after he had come from a Park City excursion and gave him a mountain to climb of my own. Needless to say, David Lee Roth had no trouble helping me reach the peak. The next night at the show, after slapping on my David Lee Roth given pass, I gladly avoided the opening band side of the backstage hallways. I then made my way to the little steel fortress out in the crowd called the FOH to enjoy David Lee Roth's antics and patiently wait for the ever-coveted after-show party, which would soon upset a couple of the which would soon upset the Salt Lake City backstage balance for good. So, like I said, Salt Lake City was a very, competitive groupie situation in the 80s. And there were women that were there before us. And one of them, her name was Lisa Susan. I can't remember if it was Lisa or Susan, and her friend Trudy. Trudy worked at the K-Bear, which was the hot radio station at the time in Salt Lake City, and was really nice. She was actually the nice of the two, but Lisa Susan, and she was still working at some little music gig like 10 years ago, the last time I saw her. She walked out by the t-shirt when I was walking in with my backstage pass on and stopped and stuttered, and she still gave me a crusty, like, she was just stopped and was like, what the fuck are you doing here? Not working, honey. You are. So shut the fuck up. Yeah, I ran into her a few times. So she was a bitch. So when I talk about the other girls, this is what I'm talking about. Susan, the Lisa Susan girl talks shit about with other bands. You know, oh my God, they're so underage. Oh my God, you shouldn't even be with those girls. They're such fucking whores. So she was constantly talking shit, and she talked so much shit that the rest of the guys were like, goodbye, because you don't talk shit about other girls. We didn't while we were hanging around with the band, but again, I'm talking about the reality of the balance of rock and roll in Salt Lake City at the time. These girls had been around for a few years. In fact, Lisa Susan is on the Bark of the Moon poster with Ozzy. Because a lot of people don't realize they did a lot of shit like that in Salt Lake City. Filmed a lot of videos here. I can look at a lot of live videos and be like, oh, there's all these people I went to high school with. You know, people I know are in the front row. So, so when I talk about upsetting the Salt Lake City backstage balance for good, I'm not being a bitch. It's just naturally new girls come along, and we happen to be the new blood in town. And naturally, the guys are going to be interested in new blood. They're, who are these girls? You know, just like we were interested in new band members. Like, I was like, oh, David Lee Roth, oh, he's old school. But Bret Michaels, ooh, boy, did I learn. All right. So you see, the after show for the David Lee Roth party is a hand-picked event, and many girls had passes to get them into the roundup, but it didn't mean they would get to the band. It was a fierce crowd to be tossed into. It was like sharks. David Lee and his guitarist Steve Vai were quite coveted conquests, and every groupie in town was out in force, or at least the ones that hadn't sadly ended up with the Poison guys anyway. As Kristen and I sauntered our way to the backstage gates, knowing we had already had our picks, the eyes jaunted toward us. They saw our passes were different from theirs. Any groupie will zero in on the pass first, because it says more than any girl will ever have to. Ours said it all, because your pass will say it would have the initials on it, whether it was guest, VIP, blah blah blah, right? And yeah, back then we would zero in because you had your meet and greet passes, you had your guest passes, your VIP passes, your laminates, tells you. So they're all darting around. They had after show passes. So they saw our passes were different from theirs, and any groupie will zero in on that pass first because it says more than any girl will ever have to. Ours said it all, that the tides were turning. There was new blood in town, and we didn't have to wait among the crowd. We already were. We already, and as we were already were. Oh, we didn't have to wait among those. Wait to be among the chosen few. We were already chosen, and as we passed through the gates, kissing Richie's cheeks on the way in, it was obvious. Kristen and I walked backstage and into the after show party room reserved for the band and the handpicked guests. Being the first of the groupies to be escorted backstage and into the private suite had suddenly toppled the status quo of Salt Lake City's elite rock and roll picture. My friend and I were not expected to be a part of the since she and I had been briefly my friend and I were not expected to be part of the party since she and I had been briefly seen around Poison the night before the show. But Kristen and I were different. We were the groupies that could defy the boys' rules. The girls who could run with the boys, not behind them, and this did not sit well with the now over the hill girls that were still waiting to be picked from the crowd being held on the other side of the backstage barrier. Kristen and I were still only 17, and now thanks to the decisive action of our favorite roadie Richie, Kristen and I were the official reigning queens of the scene. This was painfully obvious that night to the other handful of long-standing girls that had paved the way before we had began to dominate the rock and roll debauchery. Mission accomplished. Kristen and I had been at a silent war with a couple of the girls on the scene for some time, and had thus far tripped them up at every corner. This was the straw that was going to break the camel's back that night. We took in the moment, knowing that from here on out, we would want for nothing, and we knew how to get it. But we hadn't really wanted for anything for the past 2 years, so what would be different now? So, of course, we would be the first of the guests to grace David Lee's private after party. This was a privileged place to be at the time, as it was where the band picked their bedmates for the night if they did not have one already from the night before, or simply wanted a fresh kill. Stories of these parties became urban legends among the other girls, but Kristen and I had already knew that tonight would not be one of those kinds of night. We were both staked and claimed, and that took 2 of the most desired members of the band off the table. Kristen and I privately took in the scene, smirking at each other because she went back with Steve Vai. That's her story to tell. All right. Kristen and I privately took in the scene, smirking at each other and wandering about the former catering room. There, surrounded by other anonymous food, was the ever-infamous bowl of green M&Ms that had been so lauded in magazines like Metal Edge and Rip. The speakers on the stereo were taller than us and hooked up to an old-school mixing board. Unexpectedly, out of the speakers blared the newest and hottest rap act, Salt and Pepper. Hearing Push It Good still makes me think of that night to this day. Because, yeah, you don't expect to be backstage at David Lee Roth and hear, "Shah, push it, ba-la-la-la, push it good, shah, push it, push it real good." Fucking love that song. I still love Salt and Pepper to this day. But, yeah, that song. First time I ever heard that song, backstage at David Lee Roth. There were bottled drinks in a large trash can cooler, and wine spread out around about the room strategically, so the band members had an excuse to go to that side of the room if there was a girl they wanted to get close to. It was all a calculated and well thought out seduction. Most rock and roll nights off or after the show were plotted out by the groupie loving rockers in the 80s, and still sometimes are. What else do you think these guys do on the bus or in the plane? They plot out their groupie conquest just the same as we did our band game. It was the 80s, and the groupies were prizes and the pawns and pawns in our band game. Roadies, and when I talk about the band game, you might have heard it mentioned in a song called, I don't know, something about never cared for games they played. The band game was a joke that kind of came up. It was the night of Metallica, but anyway, the band game was just kind of how we put it. It was, we all were playing it. We were all at that hotel bar ready to seduce our rocker of choice, and vice versa. They were ready to see what women were waiting for them in that hotel bar. It was just kind of ritual, day low, habitual at that time. Like I said, it was the 80s. It was hedonism. We were free sexually, spiritually, financially, everything. For the first time, women had total freedom to be themselves, and we just took it to the fucking hilt. We knew what we wanted. It's not like I was some senior in high school sleeping with a couple of guys off the football team and a teacher, like a few of the girls I knew from high school were, getting knocked up, no. We weren't going to play with the boys. We were playing with the men. Get their balls. You know. And the band game was what we called it. My cousin Petey kind of came up with that name because we were getting ready to go hang out with Metallica, and he was bringing us some weed. And he was like, "Oh, where are you good ladies going? What you getting all dressed up for?" To me and Danny. And he was like, and we were like, "Oh, Metallica's in town." And he was like, "Oh, going to play the band game, are ya?" And it just became the fucking running joke from there on out. But like I said, we were all playing the band game. You guys, if you really want to hear the 80s perspective, go listen to part 2 and 1 of me and my friend, my roadie friend, FOH, a legendary FOH. You all know who he is. If you've watched it, go watch it. It's Bitchin' in the Kitchen, episode 1 and 2. Hear it from a roadie's point of view. Because like I said, it was heated in the 80s. We were all wild and free and active as could be between the sheets. So, okay. Roadies got money for bringing band Conquest backstage. Age was still not an issue, and girls that were less than legal could become rock and roll's most sought after and sophisticated women. Like I said, we had fake IDs. I will protect these guys to the day I die, and even beyond that, because they didn't know. A lot of these guys were surprised when my book came out. That's how little they knew. Okay? So don't be going hating on guys because we got people like Diddy and R. Kelly and Jay-Z and all that shit going on, because those guys deserve the justice. These guys, nope. Don't even. Gonna have to fucking deal with me if you do. You don't want that. All right. Rock and roll was still the territory. Could become girls that were less than legal could become rock and roll's most sought after and sophisticated women. Rock and roll was still the territory of the young. Tonight, Kristen and I were rock and roll's newest debutantes, and Richie was several $100s richer. It was kismet and a perfectly defining evening. Kristen and I couldn't have been any happier when the door swung open and Doug, DLR's tour manager, led the herd of drummer and bass player food into the room. At the back of the line, there were 2 enemies that had tried to ruin Kristen and I's reputations with a couple other bands. With stone-struck looks on their defeated faces, Lisa and Trudy headed into the corner and began to hold up the wall. They were old news, and especially knew it when Steve Vai and David Lee glided into the room and onto the couch where my friend and I were holding court and waiting for our men to come to our sides. It was official. The backstage world in Salt Lake City had shifted. And don't take that wrong. Like, I know it does sound completely egotistical, but like I said, I'm just being honest. It's just like when things shifted in LA to, Lori Maddox and Sable Starr, and Jimmy Page ditched Pamela DeBar's at the Rainbow for Lori Maddox that night. That shit went on. It was a cold, calculating world no matter where you were. In LA, everybody's like, LA was the party central of the 80s. It was everything metal. Well, it was even worse in LA than what was happening in this book, because the girls were way more worthless. Well, not worthless, ruthless. I'm so sorry. The LA women were not worthless by any means. I think there was a lot more fun backstage scenes around the United States out of LA than a lot of people know, and I think they should all be brought up. But they were more ruthless in LA than we ever were. Like, they were cut fucking throat. We were just subtle and like gave people a middle finger. Because we didn't even know we were doing it. We didn't even know that we were taking over the scene until these girls started bitching at us like every time we were at a show. You know, she would bitch at us. And like I said, even like 10 years ago, the last time I ran into that Lisa Susan chick, she came walking out of the office at the this metal place downtown Salt Lake City. Starts with a C. Oh God, what's the name? I can't remember it, but I will. Anyway, the Complex, like Anthrax has played there, and this actually Anthrax was playing there because a friend of mine, Robin, was doing the T-shirt. And she also plays bass in a band called Gruesome. She's badass. Love you, Robin. You fucking rock. But you don't want to date James Hetfield, girl. Run. Anyway, so when I ran into Lisa Susan, like I said, she just walked out of the office and saw me walking in and heading towards, the FOH after saying hello to Robin. And she just stopped and still gave me that fucking crusty look. And I just stopped and was like, really? You're still there? How old are you? We're in our fucking 40s, bitch. You're probably 50 by now. Because she was a few years older than me. And I was probably about 46 at the time, 47. And, yeah, because the 80s ladies, we're just still there. It's like we were the last great groupie scene in the world, in rock and roll history in the years. And 80s was like the last hurrah for really awesome groupie scenes. So, yeah, we just sort of hung out there for a long time. And a lot of us are still friends with the guys that we hung out with. But like I said, there was Lisa Susan still giving me that dirty look. And I was just like, really? And I had ran into her a few years before in Vegas when Aerosmith was in town. And I had been hanging out and I'd gone back to the Hard Rock with a few of my roadie friends to have drinks and stuff and whatever, And she was there still giving dirty looks, just still being fucking hateful. It's like, what did I ever do to you, bitch? I'm sorry I might have slept with someone that you had a thing with before I came along. But don't hate me because I didn't know it. Hate the guy. Don't hate me. And I don't know why she still hated me because I never really talked shit about her. Except for in my book. Because I was honest about how I was thinking. So, there you go. That was May of 88. There was Aerosmith. There was Iron Maiden. There was Kiss. Kiss was end of February, I think. I have to look at the past. But my God, who else was there? Because, like I said, it was day after day after day. Oh, White Lion. Oh, God. Yngwie and Lita. That was fun. Making out with Chris Holmes while Lita was on stage. But like I said, Lita Ford and I have slept with a lot of the same guys. John Entwistle, Nikki Sixx. I made out with her fiance. I never slept with Chris, but he was a good kisser. So there you guys go. Tell me what was happening with you in 1988. And you other my other groupie, 80s groupies ladies here, tell me how your May of 8. Could you still walk after May of 1988? Because I sure as fuck couldn't. But if I fucked Brett, I could have skipped. Thank God. Ladies, like I said, if it's not working when the oral, before the big bang happens, if it's not working, don't be afraid to walk away. Own your shit. Just walk out. Just bye. Bye, Felicia. Because it's not about pleasing just those guys. It's about pleasing everybody who's involved in the band game, It's about having that happy medium and, and making connections and a lot of friends. But Bret Michaels is not my friend. Because he just sucked. It's just tap, tap, tap. Goodbye. David Lee Roth was none the wiser. And we hung out quite a few times afterwards too. So never found out. And also, what a lot of people kind of mistake is asinine is the fact that I do talk about how we flipped the band game on its head in the 80s. Because there were all these rules that groupies before us kind of just went along with because it was the rock and roll world, rockers world, right? But in the 80s, no, we fucking flipped the band games because there were always rules. There's a respect that people don't really know. So I'll do an episode on it one day, what the rules in rock and roll are, and we defied those rules. We broke them. We kicked them in the door. We flicked them to the side and said, oh, no, it's our game now, boys. Come here. So, all right. Hope you guys don't hate my attitude too much. Like I said, we were just strong women who had the ability to love him and leave him as we chose. And that's what we chose. So, all right, everybody. If you're just lurking around, get down there. Thank you to everybody. Oh, I always forget to do that. But thank you to everybody who gets to the end of the episode. You guys are awesome. I can't thank you enough. There's so many amazing people here. My Metallo ladies and Metallo guys. Everybody who's just hanging out. The Dave Gone fam. You guys are awesome. You know, the Def Leppard, the Scorpions fan. And I'll do some more on the Scorpions as well. Because I haven't done anything on them for a long time. So, got to talk about those boys. I love the Scorpions. So, all right, you guys, hit that subscribe if you aren't already. Hit the bell. Become a members. We'll see you next time on Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.